Hello, all you beautiful people. So today we're going to talk about the brain a little bit. I had the opportunity to check out an interview by two doctors, Dr. Dean and Aisha Sherzai. And these doctors used to work for pharmaceutical companies, and then they said, this stuff isn't working. Let's go out on our own and share what we're learning in the literature for brain health. So they did this brain breakthrough masterclass, and I just want to share with you some of the things that you might find interesting that I did. So they talked about the 4 top brain myths. I won't go into all of them, but basically, if you're afraid of getting Alzheimer's because of your genes, that's really not accurate, because 95% of cases are avoidable. They're still genetic, but they're polygenetic, meaning that the genes just confer risk, but it's really your lifestyle and your environment and what you do with your life that impacts how those genes respond, okay? So just because maybe your grandparents or your parents had this disease does not mean that you need to get it, because you have a lot of control over how your genes are expressed through your lifestyle, attitudes, behavior, etc. Okay, myth number 2, old age means unavoidable cognitive decline. So this is false. So there are lots of things that you can do to optimize brain capacity and cognitive ability well into old age. And that includes complexity, challenge, and purpose. So, things like learning a new instrument, volunteering someplace you haven't been before, playing like cards or chess with friends. But things that really challenge you and kind of make you feel like a beginner again. They might make you feel stupid or like just dumb because you're not coordinated. You're a beginner. You're like a little kid learning to walk again. And when kids are learning to walk, we don't make fun of them for stumbling around and not being good at walking. We encourage them. So that same thing when you're learning something new, be it a new language or maybe a lot of times in exercise classes, I'll have people do different combinations that really screws up their brain and their minds, and it feels hard, but it's actually really good for you. One of my favorite stories came out of Reader's Digest, actually. A couple years ago, they did a really great spread on the brain and brain health, and one of the neurosurgeons that was featured on this article said that in order to challenge his brain, the hardest thing that he did one summer was he bought a boat and he bought a truck or some kind of SUV or something. And he said the hardest thing that he had to do was learning how to back that thing up into, where he needed it to go, into the ramp or whatever. So what's hard for somebody may not be hard for you, and vice versa, but it's really about stretching yourself and getting out of your comfort zones and being kind of silly and open to learning new things and just being a beginner again. And taking your challenges to the next level. So always kind of upping and upping, because your brain, as we'll learn a little bit later, loves complexity. Myth number 3 is that your brain stops growing after a certain age. So it's true that as we age, we lose neurons and the important connections between them, but you can grow billions of new neurons and connections and rebuild synaptic plasticity as you age. So aerobic exercise does several things to promote optimal brain health and function. It enhances the brain's connectivity. It improves the integrity of the brain's white matter and promotes the growth of new brain cells and produces brain growth factors. So aerobic activity appears to me the most significant lifestyle factor when it comes to generating new cellular neural connections in the brain. So they used to think that after a certain age that your brain did not grow, but growth occurs at any age. And aerobic exercise is one of those things that increases blood flow and increases white matter in the brain. So you're going to have faster connections. Okay, So let's move on to some of the breakthroughs, the 10 brain breakthroughs. So the first breakthrough is adopting an optimal dietary pattern. So people who adhered strictly to the MIND diet, which is a hybrid of the Mediterranean and DASH diets. So you're familiar with the Mediterranean diet. It's largely whole foods, little unprocessed food, grains, fruits and vegetables, fish, small amounts of red meat, beans, lentils, fruits and vegetables, olive oils, healthy fats. And then the DASH diet is just a low sodium diet. So the MIND diet is a combination of those two. People who adhered strictly to this diet had a 53% lower risk for developing Alzheimer's and were found to have cognitive functioning similar to someone 7.5 years younger. So the MIND diet is powerful and it's been proven. And it includes things like turmeric berries and greens and other specific foods that have been proven to boost brain health. So breakthrough number 2 is cross-brain connections. So your brain has several distinct parts, and when you build neuronal connections across these parts, you create the potential for exponential increase in your cognitive capacity. Evidence has demonstrated rather clearly that this is incredibly important to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's and other dementias. So you can expand your neuronal connections with any given neuron by up to 15,000 times. These tens of thousands of connections between neurons may protect you from minor vascular disease, amyloid deposition, which is an abnormal protein accumulation associated with Alzheimer's disease, and also from chronic inflammation. So having a redundancy of systems and connections in the brain can be one of the best protections against cognitive decline and aging. So what they're saying here is that the more connections that you can build between neurons in your brain, between cells in your brain, the less likely you're going to be affected by dementia or cognitive decline, because if some of your connections stop working for whatever reason, from lack of nutrition or maybe you have some type of traumatic brain injury or stroke, there's other connections in your brain that can take up where those connections were damaged. So the more connections that you make, the more that you learn, the more that you challenge your brain, the more that you expand your mind, the more that you keep an open mind and learn new things, the more neuronal connections you're going to have in your brain, and the less likely you're going to be impacted if some of those neurons die off or are damaged as we age. So you want to get those cross-brain connections. So building more neuronal connections doesn't just give you more brain potency in the short term, it also provides long-term protection against possible atrophy and blockages later in life. Okay, breakthrough number 3, we talked about this earlier. Your brain loves complexity. So researchers from the University of College London, they compiled brain images from London taxi and bus drivers, all of whom had similar experience and jobs in the same region. And the study found that taxi drivers had better brain health, generally speaking, than bus drivers, and had significantly larger hippocampus or hippocampi. This is the area of the brain responsible for encoding memories as well as navigation and spatial processing. So this is the area of the brain that can actually grow new brain cells, which is very exciting. But stress and cortisol can affect the hippocampus. So that's why meditation and prayer and doing things that decrease your stress is really important for memory and for your brain health. But I digress. So specific kinds of challenges, which we call good stress, build new neuronal connections across different parts of the brain. For example, singing, playing a musical instrument, learning a new language are all great ways to build neuronal connections. And challenging your brain on a regular basis means doing things that are uniquely complex and doable every day. So going back to the bus and the taxi drivers, the reason why the taxi drivers had the reason that they theorize that the taxi drivers had better brain health is because the taxi drivers had to map out many different routes to many different locations depending on where they were, who they were picking up. Like they didn't have the same route every single day like the bus drivers did. So the bus drivers weren't rewiring their brains with new neuronal connections. They were just doing the same thing every day. Whereas the taxi drivers had to think and, connect A to B. They had they also were familiar with a larger part of the city instead of just one small area, like a route that a bus takes. They had to know the entire streets in the city. So your brain loves complexity. So if you're interested in something, keep going with that interest. Keep fueling your passions and your desires, and whatever interests you, take it to another level, even if it's challenging. Our brains get tired, yes, and they need to rest, yes, and they need nutrition, yes, but they also need to be challenged. They need complexity, and your brain will grow in response to that. Okay, breakthrough number 4 is actually taking brisk walks. Brisk walking can reduce Alzheimer's risk by up to 40%. When we exercise, even in the form of a simple daily walk, hormones in our bodies called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, it's one of my favorite hormones or neurotransmitters that I talk about a lot, or BDNF, helps to build strong connections between brain cells. And this builds what's called cognitive reserve, also known as resilience and plasticity, which further strengthens neuronal connections. So, what fires together wires together. So if you that's why they say after you learn something, then go and exercise, or exercise while you're learning something, because getting your heart rate up and doing aerobic exercise actually helps to make BDNF, that brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps you to remember things and helps to create faster, stronger synaptic connections. It just kind of helps to clear out any roadblocks and make things faster connecting. So if you're trying to remember something, it's good to do it while you're moving. When I was in undergrad at U of I walking, there was a lot of cornfields like out in Champaign-Urbana, and I'm a morning person, so I would get up early to study, like on the weekends if I had a biology test coming up or something. And I remember holding my book and walking like around these farms and these cornfields, just reading my biology book out loud, the parts that I needed to study or whatever. And I did really well on those tests, and I really didn't have to put much effort into studying. Like sometimes when you sit down and you kind of force your brain to study, it doesn't go so well. But because I was moving and I was engaging not only my visual senses and reading it, but also my verbal sense because I was saying it out loud, and my kinesthetic sense because I was walking, and then even, I was feeling the book, I was walking, so I was listening, I was reading it and seeing it, and then I was feeling it in my body as I was walking. If you can stimulate all of those different senses in your body, it's going to help you to learn and remember things a lot faster than if you don't utilize those other ways of learning. That's why, when you're learning a new language, stories really help, or even with kids, or songs, if you can put it into a song, you're never gonna forget that song. So again, going back to complexity and taking brisk walks is one of the best ways to improve neuroplasticity. And a lot of the members that I work with will tell me that their doctor says the best thing that you can do is walk. And that's for many reasons. Walking is an essential body nutrient that most of us aren't getting enough of due to either pain with walking, or we're just out of the habit, we don't make time for it, etc. But we'll talk about that at another later video. But I think another reason why these doctors are recommending just a simple walk is because, yeah, you can do it without any kind of equipment, but it's also very an easy thing to do that provides a lot of bang for your buck. As we just learned here, it's all movement releases BDNF, but walking is therapeutic it gets you outside in nature, gets you grounded, especially if you walk outside. Not saying you can walk inside and you're going to get the same effects and benefits in terms of making BDNF, but the more stimulation that you have for your brain, the more different things you're seeing outside, the more new experiences you're exposed to, that's going to grow your brain. That's why it's so important for babies to have as much stimulation as they can. So as we age, we want to continue and keep that up. So breakthrough number 5 is exercise strategies, which we just kind of briefly touched on. 3 exercise strategies these are nothing new, and you're familiar with it. It's going to be aerobic exercise, strength training exercise, and then thinking about frequency of the movement that you're doing. So these doctors for aerobic exercise, they recommend for their brain health protocol is 25 to 30 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, with a goal of reaching a minimum of 150 to 300 minutes a week. And I think that's what the American Academy of Sports Medicine recommends, or National Academy of Sports Medicine recommends. So, that looks like a half an hour walk every day. Like, what I recommend is set a timer for 15 minutes, walk for 15 minutes. When the timer goes off, turn around and come back. There's your 30-minute walk. And if you're building up to that 30 minutes, just start with 2 minutes out, 2 minutes in, there's a 4-minute walk. Little bits over little goals or little steps over a long period of time is going to add up to really big differences that you're going to, be astonished at. And then strength or resistance training is important too, because leg strength exercises, interestingly enough, are strongly correlated with the size of the brain. So the larger your leg muscles, the larger your brain. That must be why I have such a big brain. Just kidding. But you want to have that strong leg muscles, not only for your brain health, but for function as we get older. I see so many people who lose muscle mass because they're, maybe they have a skiing accident in their 50s and then they don't realize that they've lost some muscle when they were down and out for a week. It's not really noticeable, but then say in their 70s, they go into the hospital for a few days because of pneumonia or something. And all of this accumulates. It's like a snowball effect. And then one day you're like, maybe in your 90s and you want to live to be 100 or something, and you're feeling really weak because you weren't aware of that muscle loss that happened over time. So this is just a little plug to say, don't forget to do your exercises for strength to build up your legs. And in order to do that, you have to have enough protein in your diet or you're not going to be building anything. So you have to be taking in more protein. And actually, experts are now recommending more than the 0.8, which is recommended by the RDA. They're recommending, I believe it's 1 or 1.2 to 1.6. I'm guessing here for when you're in your 70s. But I think that should still apply to people who are like in their 40s, 50s, and 60s as well, just to not miss out on that muscle building capacity. Because a lot of times when you lose weight, and a lot of us are trying to lose weight, we also lose muscle mass, and we don't really realize that until we get older, and it's kind of cascaded into more muscle loss, more bone density, and we don't even realize it. So I hope that makes sense. That's my little plug. So then the last thing is one of my favorite topics. So when I was in grad school, I actually did a research project and had a poster that I presented that my advisor suggested I call sitting kills, because the research was showing that people the more sedentary lifestyle that you lived, the more likely you were to end up in an assisted living place or needing help as you got older. So it makes sense. So the less that you move, it's like an object in motion stays in motion kind of thing. But problems start to arise the more that you spend sitting, the less time you spend moving. So interestingly enough, even if you go to the gym for 30 minutes every day, if you spend the rest of your time sitting and working at a computer or sitting and watching TV. I mean, people don't realize how much time sitting actually adds up, because you drive to your work, you sit at work, you eat your meals sitting, you play cards sitting, you socialize sitting, you eat dinner sitting, you watch TV sitting. Most of the time we're sitting, unfortunately. And the body has a reaction to all of this. Our glucose and insulin and cells don't respond as quickly. All of these metabolic factors change because we're not moving. And as well as our muscles, as well as our bones, as well as our structure. So what they're finding is also for your brain as well. So studies found that even if you did a 30-minute workout, the benefits are reduced if it's followed by 4 to 6 hours of being sedentary. And I found that in my research as well. People think that, oh, I'm fine because I go to the gym every day for half an hour. But if you're sitting mostly for the rest of the day, it really has an impact. So the best thing is to move, stretch, and I'm not talking about crazy, exercise. It's just simple daily tasks. So if you are at home, sweeping and taking care of things, but if you're at work, then you're going to need to stand up, every hour at least. They recommended to get up and move around for at least 30 seconds throughout the day. So I would say to try to get up every hour. So set a little timer so that you're getting up and you're moving, getting up and down and walking around, stretching, really signals to our body that to stay healthy and vital and alive, and keep all those chemical reactions happening efficiently and to the best of our health. Okay? So breakthrough number 6 isn't really anything new. It's replace bad stress with good stress. So we talked about good stress being things that you get excited about that might be challenging, but kind of push you to evolve into a better person. And then bad stress is that fight or flight response, that cortisol response from worrying all the time, or not being able to let things go. And so there's different practices that you can do: exercise, meditation, there's self-help groups, journaling, essential oils, massage, baths, Epsom salt baths, like tea, connecting with friends and family, pets, lots of things that you can do to help decrease stress, decrease your blood pressure, so that you don't stay in that fight or flight sympathetic response in your body. You really want to spend most of your time in your parasympathetic state. Unfortunately, it's interesting because in nature, animals don't really die from hypertension or heart disease. They don't die from these inflammatory diseases. And that's largely because, A, they don't have as long of a lifespan as humans, but B, they don't really worry about things like humans do. They get into a stress situation, a fight or flight situation, and then they either flee or they fight, and then they let it go and they forget about it. So when they're stressed, they seek to become balanced again. And, when they're stressed because they're hungry, they seek out food, and then that solves that problem. But in our society, we live with chronic stress because of our jobs, because of our families, because of our relationships, because of what have you, because of not having exposure to outside light, maybe disrupting our circadian rhythm, maybe, not having the right environment, not getting grounded. Lots of different things can affect our sleep, can affect our stress, and keep us in this state of fight or flight and sympathetic. And this is really damaging to our brain. Like I mentioned cortisol earlier, cortisol can be very impactful to our hippocampus. And, I know for myself, when I'm under a lot of stress, I just don't remember things as well. I forget things. I have trouble word calling or recalling words. And it just, you can feel the effects of the cortisol and the other hormones that are having on your body. And so it's really crucial that you address your stress through lifestyle. So if your job is really stressful, you need to find ways to take breaks throughout the day, or just 2 minutes of breathing and meditation has been shown to reduce those stressful brain chemicals and body chemicals like cortisol and raise healthier feel-good chemicals like oxytocin or serotonin. So it's really worth your time to stop and take a deep breath, or stop and stretch, or stop and send a text or an email uplifting a neighbor, or a coworker, or things that make you feel good. That's going to decrease your stress. And I know when we have a stressful situation, a lot of times we want to just try to figure it out right then and there. But if that's not working, then it's really important to take a step back, breathe, know that everything's going to work out and be okay, and just get connected again to yourself, get grounded. That's really not only going to help how you feel inside, but it's going to be wonderful for your brain as well as your genes, your telomeres. So you're going to live longer. You're not going to age as quickly because your cells will be duplicating versus replicating with mutations. We talked about that in another video, I believe in the meditation video. Okay, so breakthrough number 7 is eat foods your brain loves. So we talked about this before. Blueberries as one example, and I recommend organic blueberries if you can get them. Blueberry consumption can delay cognitive aging by as much as 2.5 years. People who eat leafy, so that's pretty cool. People who eat leafy green vegetables once or twice a day experience significantly less cognitive decline than those who don't. And studies show that people who drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day at midlife wind up with 65% decreased risk of dementia as they age. So I don't think coffee is for everyone, especially if you are more of an anxious type. Coffee can, because of the caffeine, it can raise your cortisol levels. So if you're already kind of high strung and anxious anyway, I wouldn't say to pick up drinking coffee, but studies do show that caffeine found in green tea and coffee, there is a correlation between longevity and health. So that's exciting for you coffee lovers. Breakthrough number 8 is take your brain to the spa. So when you sleep well, your brain's janitorial glial cells clean up waste products and get rid of unnecessary neural connections. So just like in your body, you have this immune system, you also have an immune system in your brain. And these glial cells will go around and sweep up debris and toxins and things that aren't supposed to be there, chemical byproducts, of just natural daily chemical reactions that happen. They will clean that up while you're sleeping. That's when that happens, while you're sleeping. So it's really important that you get good sleep. And we've talked a lot about this in previous lectures and things, but sleep, going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, finding that rhythm, finding that circadian rhythm. If you're having trouble falling asleep at night, you may need more movement. You may need to expose your eyes to bright light during the day. You may need to wear blue light blocker glasses at night to protect yourself from the harsh, well, not harsh, but just the blue light that signals to your pineal gland to stop releasing melatonin, that it's daylight and that you're not going to go to sleep. So you don't want to confuse your brain like that. So you also want to sleep in a cool, dark environment and avoid screens, the blue light. So your computer, your TV, your iPhone, your regular phone, like not your regular phone, but your Android phone, anything that has a screen on it with shining blue light in your eyes, you want to avoid that 3 hours before bedtime. And if you're not sleeping well, then the glial cells that kind of are supposed to destroy the bad things in your brain, quote unquote, these cells will start eating away at the good parts of your brain, which damages the structure and connection with your brain and promotes inflammation. So, if you are feeling fatigued, brain fog, or having an impaired memory, that can be due to a chronic lack of sleep. So if you're having trouble sleeping, please reach out to your doctor, or you can reach out to myself. I have a lot of resources on ways to sleep better so that your brain can be at the spa while you're sleeping. Basically, while you sleep, your brain repairs itself. The rest of your body also repairs itself while you sleep, while you take naps. That's why it's so important to take naps and or sleep well. Okay. Number 9 is establish healthy routines. Consistency, again, is important for the brain. So we talked about sticking to a regular sleep schedule, an exercise schedule, and also just healthy routines. So maybe you take a cold shower in the morning. Maybe you avoid processed foods most of the time. 80% of your diet is healthy, and then 20% you allow yourself those fun splurges. So establishing a routine to have daylight in your eyes during the morning or the afternoon, establishing healthy, consistent habits is what's going to really add up over the long term. So, and then they just talk about using SMART goals. So a lot of this information can be kind of overwhelming, and you might feel like, okay, well, I'm stressed, I'm not sleeping well, I'm not eating well, and I'm not exercising. What am I going to do? And instead of making these huge leaps and bounds and big goals, what experts and research and coaches and even just sound wisdom from your grandmother is that you want to create small changes and stick to them, be consistent, and have them add up over time. So research actually shows that SMART goals, which stands for specific is the S, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is, I believe, realistic, and T is timely. So it has to be a specific goal that you can actually measure. Like, I'm going to walk for 5 minutes. That's a specific, measurable time. And then, is that attainable? Is that something that you can really do? Do you have time to do that? Is your body able to do that? So is it attainable? Is it realistic? And then T is put it on a timeline. So, over the next 30 days, I'm going to walk for 5 minutes every day. And then you hold yourself accountable to that. So let me just check on the SMART goals, because I'm not sure if I feel like that attainable, I feel like A means something else than attainable. And I want to see if my notes will say what it is. Oh, here it is. So specific, measurable, achievable. So same thing as attainable. And then the R is relevant. Instead of realistic, I said realistic. So relevant. So it has to be a goal that's important to you. Like, I want to walk 5 minutes every day because I want to be able to walk down the aisle for my grandson's wedding. Or I want to walk for an hour every day because I want to fit into my wedding dress. So it has to be measurable, specific, achievable or attainable, relevant to your goals, and put it on a timetable. So I encourage you to create one SMART goal today, like something small. You don't have to do everything. Maybe it's, I'm going to incorporate green leafy vegetables into my diet 3 times a week for the next week and see how that feels. Because I want to not only live longer and be healthier, but I want to make sure I'm getting enough fiber and nutrients and vitamins. And that's why it's relevant to you. So whatever it is for you, try to pick out a SMART goal today. If you have any questions, I'm going to be doing more talks about this brain health because it's very exciting, and things that are good for your brain are generally good for the rest of your body as well. So it's fun to dive into all that stuff. if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you next time.